Yankees tickets for people.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Allen, and I'm joined by my usual broadcast partner, former NHL defenseman Tom Laidlaw, who played for the New York Rangers and Los Angeles Kings, two teams that are not in the playoffs. And you are listening to the Laidlaw and Allen Report. We come to you twice a week to talk all things hockey. And, you know, we have now I guess we got to call you, Pete, a regular guest. Pete Weber, the legendary broadcaster of the Nashville Predators. And I wanted to have Pete on to talk about the Predators Carolina Hurricanes series because, Pete, you know, when you look around the landscape, all the favorites, seem to stumble a little bit. I mean, at least they had to work to win, but Carolina looked pretty strong in their first game against the Predators.
And not much different than the way I've seen them all this season. The Predators and the Hurricanes were tied at 2-2 at the end of two, but I think about halfway through the second period, and the score was at that point then, Carolina did a great job of shutting off center ice. And as the coaches like to say nowadays, really half-iced them. And that made things extraordinarily difficult for them to try to break through. So from, I'm going to say, about 12 minutes into the second period on, it was like Carolina just owned the rink.
Yeah, for sure.
So I hate to keep picking on these two guys all the time, but I think they're two keys for Predators to get them going. Johansson and Duchesne, how'd they play?
Duchesne did not play that well, though he did get an assist on the goal that made it that gave the Predators their second, set up Eric Haula. But no, this has been a team that has gotten to where they are because of their role players, and the role players have done very, very well for them. So after the game the other night, John Hines was saying, well, this lineup didn't get it done, so I'm looking to make changes for game number two. So now there were some guys who were left out, like Eli Tolvanen, who did not play. Victor Arvidsson had just gotten back in. So I'm looking to see some juggling of some sort done today. And then something else that happened yesterday. The Predators brought Tomasino back from the American Hockey League and put him on the roster. So their first-round draft pick. Does he get a chance in tonight's game too?
Interesting, Pete. Do you think Hines would consider, benching sitting out Duchesne?
I think he is one of those guys that says, okay, show me that you want it. And if he doesn't think he's shown him that, he probably would at least consider it.
And would you do that with Johansson as well, or has he played better, good enough to stay in the lineup?
Johansson has played better. Johansson, and then it's a reunification of the Jofa line the other night. And they produced the first goal. So Forsberg scored that in a beautiful setup from Johansson. So and then Arvidsson was just constantly at the net too. So I don't think, I'm not a coach and don't play one on radio or television, but I don't think that's what they're going to try to do.
Pete, I wanted to ask you about Hines. I don't think that he got enough credit for pulling this team together in the second half of the season. I hear a lot of discussion about Mike Sullivan for Coach of the Year, and certainly the job Joel Quenneville did, Rod Brindamore. You hear all the names. You don't hear Hines. And, it seems like he finally got everyone to buy in the second half of the season.
Yeah, it's almost like it's a classic case of what the voting totals usually are for the Coach of the Year. It's usually the guy who does the unintended, the unthought of, the underdog sort of thing. And that's why I think that he should get at least some conversation about the job that he did. There were some scouts, and a couple of them were from Detroit. Once scouts started coming back to games between periods, said, how is he doing this with this roster? So, yeah, I agree with you, Kevin.
I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit, Pete. I know you work for the Predators, but can they win a game in this series?
I think they can if they work like they did. The last weekend of the season, they played each other. There was something on the line in the first one of those games. Still a chance for the President's Trophy for Carolina, and the Predators desperately needed a win to get into the playoffs because, you can't count on Dallas losing. And so in that scenario, the Predators beat them 3-1. It was a great head-to-head matchup, almost as good as game one of the Florida-Tampa Bay series. They went at each other.
Yeah.
The Nashville's goaltending. What did you think of that in Game 1?
I thought it was fine. You got to play better around them. I really do.
Yeah.
They deserved better support there, and as we all know, and the hockey guys say it now, the goaltenders say it now. You got to protect that home plate area. Well, I think we needed, for your reference point there, Kevin, needed Lance Parrish in front of the goal.
Yes, indeed.
Pretty good for Tampa to be able to get Stamkos. Stamkos played the first 2 games, right, for Tampa, correct?
Yes.
And Kucherov back. So there's 2 pretty good players to get back in your lineup.
Yeah, obviously, though, Kucherov was so rusty. I mean, he just –
Yeah.
It was unbelievable to me to see how well he was able to perform. Absolutely unbelievable.
That is true. Right? I try to think to myself, if I sat out a whole year, had the surgery he had, and come back and play that way, my hands were never that good to start with, but they certainly would be up there. So,
and just imagine, the timing. That's what seemed critical to me, and he was just absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
The Tampa Bay team, having watched Florida play all season long, and listening to John Cooper, who was like the boy crying wolf, I think, a little bit during the final month of the season when he kept complaining that he didn't like how Tampa Bay was playing, and then there was the possible Hedman injury and all that, and I got fooled into thinking, well, Florida might be able to beat them, but boy. Even though they were tight games and highly contested games, when I watched that series, Pete, it really did seem like it reminded me, Tampa Bay won the Cup last season, and they're the deepest team in the league, and they got the best goalie in the league, and certainly one of the top 3 defensemen in the league. That,
and let's just again go back to the guys that are missing and what they accomplished in the regular year, and then you add these other elements in, and it's awesome. It's just an awesome aggregation of hockey talent.
Okay, Peter, I'm going to put your prediction hat on. Who's going to win the Stanley Cup?
Man, the Stanley Cup, because I watched again the other night, and we get so tunnel vision with just playing within the division.
Yeah.
Obviously, I've liked a lot of what I've seen of Carolina and Tampa Bay, but Colorado, really seems something extremely special to me right now. And I'm trying to think back how I can imagine this team having had only 48 points several seasons ago.
Pete, I'm going to add to my list of lies that players tell all the time. One of my favorites is it doesn't matter who's in goal. We play exactly the same no matter who's in net. That's number one. And the other one is that, I don't even hear the fans. I'm so focused on the game. I just, after a while, you just forget that there's even fans in the building. Since we've added fans in the playoffs games, I've noticed the players seem to be a little bit more inspired.
I don't think there's any question about that. I really do. And I feel sorry for the teams of the Northern Division. Now I see, 9 or 10 days, Canadians are going to allow so many fans into the Bell Center. I think that will make a huge difference for them if they are still around by that time, what their series starting tomorrow. So it's going to be an incredible thing, I think, for the Northern Division teams to adjust to that, because I'm getting tired of EA Sports NHL 20 fan noise in the background.
All right, Kevin Allen, I can take you to task. What do you mean hockey players lie?
They tell these little white lies all the time, which I just shake my head about. I mean, you've probably said it yourself. Like if their goalies aren't playing well and everything, they go and ask the players on the team, well, do you try to protect the goal more? Do you work a little harder? No, we play exactly the same who's ever in that. You can't adjust your game based on what's happening. You just got to play your game.
I remember that with Mario Lessard and Ronnie Graham. That's how far back I've heard that.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I also remember, and Pete, you can attest to this with all your knowledge about Buffalo sports. When the Buffalo Sabres had Dominic Hasek, they played like the Montreal Canadiens from the 70s. They were all up ice, pushing for nets. They didn't worry. They had a guy back there, the savior. If they gave up an odd man break, so be it.
Yeah, well, when they won the Northeast Division in '97 and went on to win their first ever Game 7, that was a team that I think most scouts labeled correctly. They are a team of 4 third lines and a world-class goaltender. And that's exactly what happened with them.
Yeah, I guess that is true, right? I mean, you want everything you say publicly. The goaltenders are going to be reading it, right? So you want to make sure you send a message. Yeah, we believe.
I don't blame them. I mean, I say it in jest, really, because I mean, that's just the way it goes. And even as a reporter, even though I had to ask the questions about, I didn't expect anyone to say, our goalie's terrible. We can't win. If we don't change goalies, we don't have a chance. Have you ever heard that out of a player?
No.
And you
won't. If you guys want to say it after a few beers sitting at the bar, they've said, well, it is true though. You do change, you do change the way you play. Even for me, like one of my key plays was, just getting the puck up to the forward at the hash marks, coming around the back of the net. And, there's certain guys that you knew that, okay, I know I can get it to him and he's going to get it out. There's other guys you're afraid to pass to because you're thinking, well, he's going to turn the puck over here. Yeah. So you do adjust your game a little bit. For most guys in the NHL, it's a pretty standard play, but you do as a player, especially as a defenseman, I think, really do adjust the way you play based on who's on the ice at your own end.
Well,
I mean, the only thing that hasn't changed is John Tortorella has everybody blocking shots. Yeah. That was the one thing that I asked Scotty Bowman like 5 years ago. What's the biggest difference you've seen, Scotty, in your years in the game? He goes, every team is playing 6 goaltenders.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's the bunker mentality. You look at the front of the net and it looks like a pillbox. They've got players all, wrapped around the net. I don't know how anyone ever gets the puck to the net. Well, they don't often.
Right. Well, although if you watch the first game of the Pittsburgh Penguins series, a lot of times, especially Sidney Crosby's off to the side of the net.
Yes.
And guys look for him there, and he's really gotten good at tipping it in. But it's a whole different game that way. Yeah. Yeah.
I was going to bring up to you guys as traditionalists yourself. When they just had a controversy in baseball where the rookie Mercedes of Chicago White Sox, the
3-0.
It was 3-0 count, yes.
Oh, yeah.
And they had to bring in an infielder to, or it was an outfielder, I can't remember.
It was a catcher. Came in and throw.
Okay, well, whoever, it was a non-pitcher and threw 47 miles an hour on a 3-0 pitch. Mercedes hit it out, and everybody was just all on him for the decorum of the game and for the tradition. And as I was watching the news report of that, I was just thinking, in hockey, it's the exact opposite. Like, hockey players will go out of their way. Like, if a guy really needs a goal and there's an empty net opportunity, they give it to him. If a guy has 2 goals, you know how it is. They got to get him the third goal. Like, that's what I appreciate about hockey is that there is decorum. Like, we don't usually have situations where, occasionally somebody accuses someone of running up to score, but it's usually not the case. It's usually just, you've been so bad that the guys can't help but score.
Yeah. So who knows what that turns into, though? Because I remember a catcher, he signed as a catcher, became a pretty good pitcher. Dave Stewart. He signed as a catcher with the Dodgers organization, and then all of a sudden you see Smokey dominating for the Oakland A's years later on the mound.
Yeah. Well, Pete, you're an old baseball guy too. What's your take on all these no-hitters? Spencer Turnbull, the Tigers pitched another one last night. I watched it well into the early hours of the morning.
Yes.
And we've just had so many. Is it just, guys are swinging for home runs, trying to get that launch angle above 100 and
launch angle, escape rate, and all of that. And then the pitchers are working on the spin rate. These stats, I mean, baseball has always been a huge stat game, but now you got guys going to little boutique baseball laboratories and increasing the spin rate on their pitches. And plus they changed the ball this year. The seams are more prominent. You can actually dig into them, so they get more spin. But I think most of it is baseball has come down to a hit or miss proposition for the pitchers and for the hitters. And there's been a lot of missing going on, a lot of it.
Another thing I noticed with baseball, too, it seems like in the old days, the guys didn't seem to be in as good a shape. They weren't as muscular. Now they're in shape. Now they're getting hurt more, too. Like you see all the time, sore thighs and everything. So is that, am I imagining that? Is that true?
No, they're too tight. I think they are too tight. They're too well honed.
Well, just look at Mike Trout too. He looks as muscular as anybody in baseball, just in terms that he's a freak and working out, and he just popped a hamstring. He's out 8 weeks.
I would like to put skates on him and stick him in front of the net. He could be Patrick Hornfist to perfection.
Yeah. I always remember the late Bob Johnson who was always promoting American hockey, and the great complaint for so many years. And we see it in Austin Matthews, who was also a very good baseball player when he was young, but he chose hockey. And in the old days, they never chose hockey. And
Correct.
I believe Bob Johnson used to, because when he was in Colorado Springs as executive director of USA Hockey, used to say, "Imagine John Elway playing left wing in the NHL." He said, we don't get John Elways. They go play football or baseball or whatever.
The closest we have to that, Kevin, I think, is Anders Lee from the Islanders, now out with injury. He was a great quarterback prospect.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, and there's been several. Well, we are starting to get those athletes now, like Seth Jones.
Yes.
He could have been a baseball player, a basketball player. Could have been a lot of different things. And we are starting to get guys who have picked hockey over other mainstream sports.
Thankfully.
Yeah, most of the guys when I played couldn't play any other sport. That was it. We only play hockey. Yeah.
Well, and that beautiful slow pitch softball tournament.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. And Niagara Falls. Speaking of that, that's what former Detroit Tigers great calls the launch angle thing. He said softball swings. He said we got guys now taking softball swings at 100-mile-an-hour fastballs. And
I used to see those because of traveling around and doing promotional appearances before minor league baseball games. The Coors Light Silver Bullets softball team, which usually incorporated a bunch of former NFL defensive linemen. Scott Verkus from the Buffalo Bills was one of those. And they're hitting softballs over the professional baseball fences in those days, just clubbing them. And that's exactly what it was.
Pete, you got to remember Eddie Feyner.
The king in his court.
Yeah, king in his court. When you in the 60s, when he was done his barnstorming tour, he came in every small little town. So even in my small town, we saw king in his court. And, he pitched from second base. Who were the three guys, the major leaguers that he struck at? One of them was Willie Mays, I remember.
Yeah, he got me. For some reason, I'm thinking Ernie Banks was in that group.
Yeah, could have been. So I think of that at second base. So, but Tom, this guy was just unbelievable. He would just
blindfolded Tom.
Blindfolded, and it was a 4-man team that he would take on teams from wherever they went to, and he'd pitch from second base, underhand. It looked like Vita Blue. The ball would just sizzle as it came across. So
best fast pitch pitcher I saw since Jerry Korab.
Really? Was Korab pretty good?
Yes, he was. He was.
Right.
Well, Pete, it's always a pleasure. We appreciated the insight and update on that Carolina-Nashville series. And, who knows? I mean, I think your point about how well they played him in those critical last two games, had to give them a lot of confidence. It wouldn't take much. You win this game 2, and then it's a series.
And then you're coming home. Yeah, and you're coming home. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, thanks, Pete.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
You too.
The great Pete Weber. Tom, I never get tired of having him on.
I know. He's always got that.
He can talk. I could bring up any possible subject in sports, and Pete could handle it.
Right. He's always got the same attitude, same mentality. He's always smiling, having fun. Yeah.
Well, that's one of my great complaints about what's happening with fan bases in every city. Is people gotten so serious they forget. Like someone said, well, why would you watch that? The teams are bad. Well, I just like sports. I like it's still sometimes a game is just a game. I really like 6-5 games where there's mistakes everywhere.
Sure,
I find them very entertaining.
And I like the 1-0 games too. Like that
can be,
Yeah, the Vegas game against Minnesota, that first game, that really wasn't a 1-0 game. It seemed like it could have been a 6-5 game. That was good.
Yeah, well, if there's a lot of action, and it doesn't, to me, it's not always shots on goal. It's when you sense something's about to happen, and then the defenseman pokes it away, and or that kind of thing. If you have a lot of that, those are entertaining games, but. I thought Pittsburgh was pretty impressive after, not having Malkin. Jari was terrible, in game one.
Yeah, but okay, you know what? I don't think he was terrible. He had 3 goals against him, and all 3 he should have had. But he made a bunch of other saves. They were fantastic saves.
Well, even he said he was terrible. He didn't use that word, but he said he had to redeem himself after that. And I just thought those goals, let's put it this way. Like, it wasn't like we've seen terrible goaltending, and I guess maybe that's the wrong word, but those were stoppable goals. And
yes, no question.
And in the playoffs, you can't have that.
Right. Especially when he was making a bunch of other great saves. Like, that's the thing. Like, people weren't looking at all the other great saves he made. So,
but anyway, the point was he wanted to come out and, this is a guy that's still trying to prove his, that he belongs as the starting goalie of an elite team.
Yeah.
And, because he's still in season 1 and this is his first playoff since he was handed the keys to the car, so to speak, and was the number 1 goalie. But I thought that was a big game out of him. And, this is a series. Like, like the Islanders, we talked down the stretch. It's just so funny. I remember Ken Holland talking to me one time about, I asked him, I was just doing a story about, we talk all the time about peaking at the right time and going out on a high note, and you want to be playing well going into that. And he pointed out, and he can do chapter and verse, and I don't remember which year was what, but he said that in his Red Wings career, there were times when they were playing great and they bombed in the playoffs, when they were playing great at the end of the regular season. And there were times when they won the cup when they weren't playing very well at the end of the regular season. So, to me, the momentum is born in that, usually in that first series.
Definitely, like, you hear people say all the time, well, you can't just flip the switch. Well, yeah, sure you can. I remember the year, I think Montreal won in '86. They beat us in the semifinals. I think they the last 10 games, they only won 1 game or something like that in the regular season. They flipped the switch and won the cup.
I'm not so sure flipping the switch is a nice, convenient way to say it. But to me, what it is, like, if you win the first game in overtime and 2 or 3 guys step up and play well, and then in game 2 they do it again, then all of a sudden, you're starting to say, hey, we got something going here, and then you're playing it every other day.
Oh yeah.
There's no practicing. I mean, they do practice, but it's a real easy kind of skate, and guys are fired up, and sometimes you're living together in hotels, even in your home town, and the boys are all together. And
I remember my first year in the league, 80-81, when they ranked the teams 1 through 16, the playoff teams at that time. So we went out and beat LA in the first round. I think we were 15th and they were 2nd. And we had a big brawl out there and everything. And we really, that big brawl really brought us together. And then we beat LA, we beat St. Louis, ultimately lost to the Islanders, and then went on to win their 2nd cup. But that was a blast. First year in the league, but you're thinking, okay, that's the way it's going to be all the time, because you're really looking forward to the playoffs. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, it's so weird to hear you say, and it really hits me because I have started covering the NHL for USA Today in '86, and I wrote my first NHL story in the 1970s. Right. So then I'm hearing you say, when I played 80-81. Now that was 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Now, when you played then, 40 years before that was 1940.
Yeah.
Like, when you came in, and you would have thought anything that happened in 1940 was prehistoric.
It's true. That's a good way of looking at it. That's interesting. And there's only 21 teams in the league at that time too. The thought now there's going to be 31 teams in the National Hockey League. Wow,
when I started to become a fan of the NHL, there were only 6.
Yeah, that's right.
So and so it's just so now, we've got Vegas is one of the Stanley Cup favorites according to the odds makers.
Yeah,
you got Seattle, the Kraken. I just love saying that. But if you're a traditionalist, I'm sure all the knuckleheads out there who can't stand the pregame ceremony in Vegas also hate the Kraken as a name. Yeah. But it's all great. I love the tradition of the original 6, but I also enjoy, kind of the fun of the new teams. And
in places where when I was around, we didn't think that hockey could survive. Right, 2 teams in Florida, all the teams in Southern California. I mean, I remember when I got traded to Los Angeles, everybody's like, God, it's just not going to work there. And all of a sudden, Wayne shows up, and he showed it worked pretty good. So he changed the league. Hey, speaking of Vegas, are they going to have enough goal scoring? I watched them play against Minnesota, and they had a hard time scoring goals.
I never really thought that was going to be a problem, but they really look like they got to work to get a goal.
Yeah.
So, I don't that's
Cam
actually
Talbot played pretty well for him. I was surprised how well he played.
He's been a good find. And I remember I was not I didn't think that was a good acquisition.
Yeah.
I thought, oh, come on, Bill, you can do better than that.
Yeah, totally.
But, sometimes we forget. We think of guys, especially goaltenders, we forget to analyze what kind of team they were playing on, and we just talked about it earlier on. The team didn't play well. Edmonton, for example, was
no defense at all.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right. So Steve Eisman's trying to make you look bad.
Yeah, but I mean, you got sucked in. I'll use that term nicely, because the connection between Gerard Gallant and Steve Yzerman, and it is real. Like they were friends, and but we also don't know. Did Gerard Gallant really want to go?
Could be, yeah. I mean, he seems to be the leading candidate. He just interviewed for the Ranger job, and he seems to be the leading candidate at this point. But I guess maybe he didn't want to go to Detroit, or maybe Steve Yzerman wasn't ready to do the switch, like to get rid of Blashill yet, and go on and say, listen, I may have another opportunity. I can't sit around waiting. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, it will be interesting. I'd love to see Gerard Gallant in Manhattan.
Yeah,
because he's really an old school guy. So it'll be fun, and I've told the story before, but what I love about him is, like people want to overanalyze everything, and I remember during the playoffs that the power play wasn't going well. I don't remember any statistics. The Golden Knights were. This is the run when they went all the way to the final, and the power play wasn't going well. And people ask him about it, and he goes, I'm certainly into the advanced stats. I read them all. I pay attention to them. I think there's a lot of significance. You can take stuff from them. But, I watch our power play every day in practice. I watch it in the games. And I know we're not scoring. I know what the statistics tell me. But I look at it, and it looks right to me. Yeah. Like it looks like it's going to work. It should work, and it will work. And right after that, they scored a few goals, and then their numbers went back to normal. And he just didn't give, and people were just howling for change, and something needs to But
same thing when they'd finish a round and go on to the next round, they'd say, "Well, what are you going to do against this team? What are you going to change around?" There's nothing. We're going to play the same way.
That's right. We'll go hard, and you got to me. Isn't it more in-game changes like when things aren't working that lines getting loose? You got to say, "Hey, Laidlaw, you and whomever, you need to shut that line down for us."
Totally. I agree. Like, listen, the system that the team plays, that's stuff that happens in practice. I mean, that's at the start of the year. Now you can change systems as the year goes along. You add players, get injured, all that kinds of stuff. But I just think that I've said this before too, that I think coaches get too much credit when they win. They get too much blame when they lose. And I think he's one of those guys that gets that, right? He understands the players have to go play the game. It's not me that makes the team win.
Well, it's interesting. I just watched in a rain delay. That shouldn't say just. It was about 3 or 4 weeks ago. They had because the game I was going to watch was in a rain delay, and normally I would switch the channel, but they switched it to Sparky Anderson talking about at his Hall of Fame induction, and
Sparky Anderson. Oh, there's a name.
Well, and the only reason I stayed was because I was going to go elsewhere and watch something else. Is I covered Sparky Anderson, and I love the man. Like, he was so much fun to coach, and you could just. I once wrote a column where, he just started to ramble about, if I had to go into a foxhole in war, I'd want these guys with me, these athletes that I've had in my career, and he talked about each one, and it was just special. He went through some of the guys he's played with, and how much faith and trust he had in all these guys. But what Sparky said, and it made me think about what you always say about too much credit, too much blame. He said, I didn't get myself into the Hall of Fame here. out of a bunch of players, because he said, I didn't do anything. He said, I just arranged them on the field, put them where they needed to go. And then they went out and got me in the Hall of Fame. He was so adamant about that. He just went on and on about all the great players. He said, I was fortunate that I ended up with a bunch of great players.
And he let them play. Right? But the key is he let them play, right? Let them do their job, right?
Yeah. And I just thought it was just a real entertaining speech, and he was so humble. And
that's good.
And obviously there was a little bit more to it, having witnessed Sparky Anderson, because he was a real manipulator in terms of there's a famous in Detroit moment when Gibson hits a home run off Goose Gossage in the '84 World Series, and they had both. Sparky was mic'd up, so when you saw the DVD back then, no, it wasn't DVD, it was a whatever it was, VHS, and you'd watch it. He actually talked to boy, my dogs are all worked up. Apparently, they like the story.
They like Sparky Anderson,
yeah. Sparky Anderson said, was talking about what kind of pitch he was going to throw, and he was just getting Gibson all torqued up. That's all he was doing, and you could just tell, when you watched it, and that's when he was really good. He motivated players. People laughed.
Who hit that home run again? Who was that?
That was Kirk Gibson.
Kirk Gibson. Was that the one where he was hurt?
No, that was in L.A. That was even a bigger home run.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah. Where he basically on one leg he came off and hit a home run. So he's now the broadcast analyst for Tiger Baseball, and he has Parkinson's disease.
Oh.
And it's so moving that he's willing to go on there. And there's been a couple of times when he has fumbled on the air, and and then he just is honest about it, and he says. He calls it Parky. He said Parky showed up a little early tonight, and then we go on. And I'm thinking, if you're suffering from that illness, he is an inspiration because he hasn't let him stop him, and he's out there doing his thing, and getting it done. He's really an interesting analyst to be honest.
I heard from Little Birdie recently that Mark Messier was lined up to be. Having a role with the Rangers, but Chris Drury I think they felt that Chris Drury would just accept the interim tag as GM, but I guess he felt like he had a lot of leverage and ultimately did, and just said, nope, that's not gonna. I'll take both president and GM jobs.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, it's going to be interesting. There's that. This is an important hire because. Yeah. You're messing with a good team here. No wonder people are lining up trying to get that job. You look, you're getting a guy that's probably going to win the Norris Trophy on defense. You got a great young goalie.
Yep.
You and I are both bullish on that team. I think we both thought that they were going to push for a playoff spot, and really they did. They just ran out of runway, and they didn't play well enough early.
I hear you too, and I just see. Listen, JD's a friend of mine. I know Jeff Gorton. I feel bad for those guys getting fired, but I just don't think a whole lot is going to change. The things that they are going to do that they would have been doing, JD and Jeff, they're going to do now. They know they needed to toughen up that lineup. They need more character in it, but they had to leave those spots open for those kids to play. So now they're going to do that, and Chris, I think the team seems to be in good hands. I think I know Ranger fans are upset, especially with JD because who he was as a Ranger, as a broadcaster, as a player, and everything too. So, but I still think they'll be fine.
Yeah, it's really a shame. Especially I've covered both all those guys, but I knew JD very well, and this was he wanted to come back to New York. He's and now, he doesn't have a job here. Unless, do you think he'll end up in the NHL?
JD?
Yeah.
Absolutely, yes. I spoke to him, and he didn't even consider retirement. I think, question is, where does he want to go? There was the rumor about him going to Buffalo. I don't know if there's any anything to that rumor, but that was the rumor, him going to Buffalo. I did say to him about going back to Calgary, and but he said it'd be too cold there, because he's an Alberta guy and everything, and did a lot of high night Canada stuff there. But then the rumor about Buffalo. Buffalo's a whole lot better than Calgary as far as the cold. But.
Yeah, you're trying to make major changes in Calgary. So
yes, I am. Yes, I guess I'm just looking at that team. I'm thinking, are they going in the direction they need to be going? And JD.
Don't you think they would have done something by now if they were going to do it?
Well, I guess, okay, well, who else is out there that is better than what they have there now? I guess that's so with JD, I just look and think, okay, his track record with what, he helped build in St. Louis, what he helped build in Columbus, what he was building with the Rangers. And it's like, he's like, again, out in Western Canada, especially, I mean, he's the head of the Hockey Hall of Fame committee. I just think he's viewed as this, great hockey man, which he's proven that he is. So.
Well, that's a really good point that you're bringing out, and that is oftentimes, like, you see that with trades, like sometimes teams aren't thinking that they need, like, for example, a center. I mean, but then suddenly someone becomes available, and you say, okay, well, that's an upgrade, and we should consider this. Right. And the same should be true in management. Like, if maybe you weren't going to make any change, but suddenly JD is available, and you really think JD does a good job, well, then it's a harsh business, and then you consider maybe upgrading. So
Montreal did that recently with Claude Julien, right, when he became available.
No, that's right. And I wanted to get your thought. We probably need to wrap it up here, but on Twitter, I'm reading that Cole Caulfield and Kotkaniemi, neither one of them, the young players, will play in Game 1. I find that hard to believe. Caulfield has given that team some energy.
Yeah. Oh, wow. It's not because of injury. They're sitting them out?
No, setting them out. Younger players. He wants to go with the veteran guys and been around.
Yeah. Well, and then, playoffs is a whole different game, right? Especially when you're a young player and playoffs start, because the tempo does pick up, the intensity, the hitting and everything picks up. So, maybe it's that first game they're getting them out of the way, because, again, typically that first game, everybody is fired up, right? And everybody's running around. So maybe it's just a first game thing, but.
Yeah. All right. Well, we appreciate everyone tuning in, and we'll be back next week. We'll have probably different guests talking about a different series, and these series will be a little bit more mature, and we'll have a better idea where we're headed. Because I don't think we know with all these series, Tom.
Not at all.
Other than Tampa, and again, even though Tampa's up 2-0, and I feel confident they're going to win that series. Yeah. Like, it hasn't been easy. Like,
totally.
Florida,
like the Washington Islanders series, that's a great series. It's going to be. I like Winnipeg. I'm not saying Winnipeg's going to win, but I think they're going to give Edmonton a real run for the money too.
Well, they're getting healthier. That's an important thing as well, and it's going to be. They don't have a good history though against the Oilers.
Yeah, that's true.
But history. We think it matters because we like to say things like, "Well, they haven't beaten the Oilers in whatever years," and. Yeah. But it doesn't really matter. These players don't know anything about that. So. Yeah,
I mean, last year the Rangers owned Carolina during the regular season, and Carolina beat them 4 straight. So
yeah. All right, my friend.
All right, talk to you. See you guys.